Alrighty guys, so here's my Path of Exile 1080p RX 5700 test video because there's people blaming the RX 5700s for low performance in games like this, and they're saying that it can't hold clock speeds, basically blaming the AMD cards for not being able to run low demand games or low resolutions. And every time I've seen this issue pop up, I've seen also problems with the setups that these people are using. Like, no offense to you guys, it's just there has been a lack of communication with whoever helped you build your cases, or you've just overlooked this part when doing your builds. But a single stick of RAM does not have enough bandwidth to push high frame rates in low, less intensive games. So if it's not a GPU intensive title, the performance is going to fall back on your CPU and your RAM, because your RAM requirement, your bandwidth for your RAM. So don't think of the capacity. So, for example, a game might use 4 gigabytes of your system memory. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the bandwidth it needs for a certain amount of frames to be pushed from the CPU sends the instructions to the GPU to render frames. Okay, so for the CPU to push 200 FPS worth of instructions to the GPU, this is just a really layman's explanation. It needs to have a certain amount of bandwidth in order to push that amount of FPS. So if your memory is either single channel, which is only half of the bandwidth of running 2 sticks in dual channel, you're going to run into issues. Or if you're running a low speed of RAM, like 2133 megahertz on a powerful CPU and GPU, even with dual channel, is going to bottleneck. It's basically a memory bottleneck for pushing 150 to 200 FPS at 1080p. Okay, so the GPU is capable of doing it. The CPU, hopefully, if it's a high clock speed CPU, is capable of doing it. But the memory bandwidth available, which it might need a minimum of 25,000 Mbps, with a single stick, it's going to be closer to 15,000 or 18,000 Mbps, depending on the speed. So the speed of the stick matters, the speed of the RAM matters, but single versus dual is like a doubling effect. So 2133 megahertz dual channel is actually going to have more bandwidth than 3000 megahertz single channel. So there might be someone on a 3000 megahertz stick. They're thinking, I got 3000 megahertz RAM. Why am I getting poor performance? And it might be a 1x16 gig stick. A 2x4 gig kit of 2133 of a slower speed is actually going to have more bandwidth than the higher speed single channel stick. Okay, so just be aware of that. That's why you're having low usage. If there's not enough bandwidth, it has a compounding effect. Not only is frames have to be dropped by the GPU dynamically, while the CPU keeps pushing 200 FPS worth of frames to the GPU is having to drop because it's not getting all of that data. Only 100 or so might be viable on a single channel setup. So if only 100 frames out of 200 are viable, it's dropping basically the rest of those frames because they can't transfer over fast enough, and they're already irrelevant within the frames is in frames per second. Within the second that it's pushed those 100 frames through to your screen, the other 100 that it's trying to push through are coming in late, and so it's dropping all of them to get up-to-date frames. So that's what results in really erratic performance, and it's also going to lower your usage because then the client is also going to try, like the client, the API, and your CPU and your GPU are going to try to dynamically adjust the performance to match the expected frame rate that the engine is getting. So if you would say have a system capable of 200 FPS but your memory bottlenecked, then dynamically they'll try to lower the load to push only 100 FPS, which your system can actually handle, and that results in lower GPU usage. So it's not necessarily that the GPU is broken, that it can only run 40% usage in a less intensive title. It's also a combination of lack of memory bandwidth that will lower that usage. So you might be seeing abnormally low usage because of a memory bandwidth issue. The other issue is that, again, like Path of Exile, you can see right here, I'm showing all my utilization of my threads. It is only using 4 threads primarily. The other threads have some load on them for I don't know what it's using. I don't have anything background running. It's primarily using around half of and mine's a 4-core 8-thread CPU. It's using maybe the physical cores only, and then to a lesser extent the multi-threaded, the hyper-threading cores. So think of it, imagine on a 12-thread system, it's only using it's only optimized to use 4 threads. It could be using a higher percentage of those 4 threads, but it's never going to show a high total usage. So your CPU could still be bottlenecking in some sense, because even if the game is pushing max FPS, like for example, my CPU is pushing a max of 229 FPS at 1080p, it's not going to hit 99% utilization to do that, because that would break the game. It would make the game unoptimized for lower core count setups where their CPU would max out so easily from trying to run the settings I'm running at now with the same GPU. So the way they optimize games, not all games, but the way they try to optimize games is a balance where the utilization is fairly high and the frame rates are good, but it's not going to max out a lower core count CPU and destroy the performance. So there has to be a balance there. So that doesn't mean that you're not CPU bottleneck just because you're not hitting 99% usage. It can be the game engine limiting the usage, but for the way that it's optimized, you're getting the max amount of frames for that CPU. But a stronger CPU, like a 9900K with more threads, but more importantly, 4 of those threads used for the game would be much stronger. And it might even run lower usage still. Like those 4 threads might only be utilized 50%, but the frame rate would actually be higher and more consistent because the IPC of those four threads is higher. So, enough of that explanation. It looks like my frame rates have leveled out with more effects on the screen. But you can see here that my usage and my everything there has been fairly consistent. And I'm not even running max settings, I'm actually running more competitive settings because I normally play at ultra wide. So you can see here, I've got high, shadows default, shadow quality low. Number of lights, this is a big one. This is a mix of CPU and GPU based. So with number of lights on default, it actually puts lighting on effects. So if lots of effects are happening on the screen, you're actually going to tank performance in heavy combat. And most people overlook this. They just think, oh, it's just number of lighting. It's just environmental lighting, which it is environmental lighting when set to low. So low is only environmental lighting, while medium and high starts adding it to everything. So on high, it adds it to projectiles, not just effects. But even on medium, adding it to effects is a big FPS hit. So anyway, just to prove that I'm not actually trying to, like, I'm not running max settings to artificially boost my usage. This is running lower settings. Even the anisotropic is on 2 times. I can put that to 16 though. So, and one thing you want to do, even though it's a quality thing, is keep this on dynamic resolution. This prevents FPS drop and really intensive gameplay. So when you're playing in high combat intensity scenes with 100 monsters on the screen, this will lower the dynamic resolution, which you probably won't notice because there's so much stuff going on. Like it might only lower it by down to 75% of your resolution setting, but this will help prevent FPS drop down into the 30s and the 20s. So keep this on. Like there's no reason to turn that off. They have it on by default, and keep it on if you're having stutter and FPS drop because this will help with the low FPS stutter. Now, as for the other settings, I've turned the FPS cap off. 1080p, VSync's off, and you can see here I've even set the default for anti-aliasing is on. I'll just turn that on off because the default is there. I had it on high for more clarity at 3440 because it looks nice. But you can see here I'm getting 300 FPS, and now I have to get into some combat. Obviously the FPS will drop in combat because it's based on the game engine and the CPU and what it's all capable of. I don't have a really strong CPU, given the 6th gen is like 4 or 5 years old now. But you can see here, you can see this frame latency. If you see really bad spikes in frame latency, that's when you know that you're having performance issues. And the 0.1 can go down as low as 20, and you might not notice it because it's a 0.1. It happens so fast. It's more the minimum and the 1% that you'll notice. But you can see here, I'm able to. I'll try to herd up some more monsters. I'm not at mapping yet with this character. I started a new duelist. He's only level 49. I started him yesterday. But this is already miles ahead of what I'm seeing some users getting. And if you look at the difference between our setups, a Ryzen 3600 user would probably focus on the CPU. They'd say, oh, he's running an Intel CPU. No, it's the RAM. Look at your RAM difference. If your RAM is single channel, you've got half the bandwidth that my system has, even though mine's on an older platform, a much older platform, a four-year-old platform, and yours is on a platform released in the last year. my bandwidth is actually higher because I'm running 2 sticks of RAM at 3000 megahertz, and other users may be running only stock speed, which is 2133. Oh, that's nice. Stock speed is 2133 megahertz or 2400 megahertz for most kits of DDR4 RAM. And if you buy a fast kit of RAM, you have to go into your BIOS and enable the if it's on Ryzen, the DOCP, the memory profile for it, or if it's on Intel, the Xtreme memory profile. They call it XMP. It's basically the same thing, but you have to enable it. You can't just install the kit and go to boot into Windows and expect that you run it, because it was advertised as a 3000 megahertz kit that you're going to be running at 3000 megahertz. It's going to be running at stock speed, which is around 2400 megahertz or lower, until you set it up in the BIOS. But this is just a proof of concept. It's roughly the same mob density I was seeing in someone else's video running an RX 5700, and they were getting stutter and FPS drops all over the place with a Ryzen 3600, and they're saying it's game. And they were basically blaming the GPU and the game engine, when it's likely their RAM. They were only running 8 gig RAM, and I'm guessing single channel was the main, because this is across multiple titles, not just Path of Exile. CS:GO is another big one. Call of Duty Warzone. Any game where you want to push over 100 FPS and you're not getting there, and you've got like a good CPU and GPU, the next thing to look at apart from your temps and drivers would be your RAM. Or the RAM would actually be one of the first things you'd look at. You want to be running dual channel at 3000 megahertz minimum for the best performance. You can run lower, but you're going to get, the lower you go, the more severe the FPS it is. And there's a threshold where after around 3000 megahertz, the benefits of getting higher bandwidth is minimal, because you've already got the optimal amount for your hardware. So once you hit a certain level of bandwidth, like if the GPU and the CPU only need 30,000 Mbps worth of bandwidth, having a little bit higher can improve the efficiency of the speed of the files being transferred for the game to run, but it's not going to give you a drastic FPS boost. But if you fall below the requirement, like say if the game needs 30,000 and you've only got, or if the game needs 25,000 to run 100 FPS and you've only got 20,000, you'll hit a hard FPS drop wall where running single channel or running a slower speed dual channel setup will just tank your performance until you fix that issue. So yeah, just sharing, guys, so you can see 1080p, and I'm running an RX 5700. It's clocked at stock speed, so yeah, you can see here the voltage is very low, 0.968. It's still within the stock range of voltage, but by default it wanted 1 volt, and lowering it just improves my temps, really. It doesn't improve the performance because my temps are already good even at 1 volt. But it's just to demonstrate that I'm not like highly overclocked. The VRAM is running default. Do not overclock your VRAM if you're having stutter issues, because what will happen is if there are correctable errors at the memory speed you're running at a memory overclock, it won't crash your drivers and it won't crash your game. It'll just tank the FPS and cause stutter. That's why I'm running stock memory, so that my recordings are smooth and it keeps my gameplay as smooth as possible. But yeah, so you can just watch. I'll do a video of mapping a bit later, like once I've got up to that. I'll do another 1080p video of mapping with high mob density. But this is already a good enough example compared to what I've seen other RX 5700 users with inadequate RAM running. This already basically refutes what they're saying, because they're saying that it's just a game engine. And you can see my max is going to be much higher than some users. Although it looks like it's capped at 200 for game engine based cap. Yeah, it is. There might be a bit more density in the ossuary. And the reason I've got the OSD like really intrusive here in the middle is just so people can see it better when I show the settings. See how to do that? It's not good over here. It blocks everything. It blocks the FPS and the latency. So on the left side seems to be where it fits properly. Vulnerability, yeah. I'm just working on a champion-based Impale Cyclone build, because I was trying to compare the two. Level 40, I think I don't want to upgrade that. I was trying to compare this with Marauder, and Marauder has a mechanic like they've got Berserk and the Rage, which can boost their FPS. But when I looked in Path of Building, it seems like the champion duelist version of Cyclone has much higher and consistent without needing a special buff. So I do have a Val Ancestral War Chief for boss killing, but my FPS is always really my DPS is always really high, even without, like, I don't need any special modifier like Rage to do it. But I'll see. I've still got my Marauder. I didn't scrap him. I've kept him because I want to be able to compare both. Because the weird thing is, when you see two strong builds on YouTube, they always fast forward the videos. Like, they put music and then they put it on fast forward, so you can't tell. Like, it's hard to get a clear indication of which build is stronger, and plus they're running different gear. So the only real way is to play it for yourself. And, you know, from leveling up my Marauder build, I can already tell the Marauder has better survivability at low levels, which is a given, and this build has a lot better clear speed. And my damage is it's pretty low still. Wait, Whirlwind, 14k. Pretty low, but I'm level 50, and I'm wearing trash. Ooh. Anyway, that was explanation, guys, and the demo. You can keep watching if you want to see some. If you want to try to see if my FPS drops lower, but it's not going to because 1080p is easy to run, and you can see the reason the GPU usage is able to hold such a consistent level is because I have enough CPU IPC, so that's the cores in my 4.5 gigahertz. Those 4 threads are going to be faster or equivalent to most Ryzen 3600 threads. So this isn't to say that the CPU is better than Ryzen 3600, just in this particular game that uses 4 threads, it can compete, basically. It can still compete. But the more important thing is that my 16 gig of RAM is running in dual channel at 3000 megahertz, so I have a high amount of bandwidth for the GPU and the CPU to push high frame rates. So you just need to be aware of that. You should be able to exceed or match this type of performance with the Ryzen 3600, provided there isn't a game engine level CPU optimization issue that could be possible. I don't know how well they've optimized. Path of Exile for Ryzen, but if you can find videos of the same setup performing well with the same like Ryzen CPU and then a similar GPU performing better than your setup, it's likely RAM. Then it's not an engine optimization issue. It's the main reason why some RX 5700 XT setups perform much better than others, is because those people have managed to just end up with a better RAM configuration, and it's an easy thing to overlook for new builders or people that have just bought a new PC. There are laptops that come with single channel RAM, and they're advertised as gaming laptops. So they're misconfigured gaming laptops. So I'm not going to name the brands, but they come with 16 gig of RAM, and people list their specs. They don't even bother mentioning how many sticks. They'll just put 16 gig and they think it's perfectly fine. And then when I say how many sticks of RAM is that, check in CPU-Z, like install a program to check, and it turns out it's 1 stick of RAM, so it's got half the bandwidth of lower spec setups that are running 2 sticks. So yeah. But you guys can see here, this performance is already fine. Where do I have to go here? Travel to the ruin square, kill Utila. Somewhere in... This is the ruin square. Here's some density. Like, I should be getting really bad 1%. The 0.1, it's normal when you travel between zones. Like, I'll reset that now. I'll reset the benchmark. The 0.1 dropping when you do zone travel or have a loading scene is normal. Sometimes on really heavy combat, or if there's a server latency, server side spike, you get your 0.1 will drop. But as long as you're not noticing a noticeable, like, as long as you're not seeing a noticeable stutter, it's the 0.1 is kind of irrelevant. It's more the 1% you'll notice is what you'll see, and the minimums. Yeah, you can see this performance is perfectly fine. There's no issue, even though it's a low intensity, a less intensive title in terms of graphics. Anyway, you can stick around for some gameplay. If not, then yeah, I've already explained what I needed to explain. Thanks for watching, guys. And if you have any questions, just ask in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer them and help you out if you need some advice or whatever. Because I've been doing these kind of testing and explanations for a while now, and helping a lot of people in my video comments, going as far back as like 3 years on CS:GO. But I've been building for since I was 14, and I'm 32 now. If you want some exact numbers, so I've been building and troubleshooting and gaming for over 10 years, easy. Like closer to 17 years. Bet you it'll be up here. Yeah, the last place I look. It's a 44 zone and I'm level 50, that's why it's so easy. Is that it? Talk to Bannon. Yeah. I was trying to buy one of these and there were none on PoE trade. They were all really expensive, and so I bought a 6-link for I think it was 10 chaos. It's not even a very good one. And it just so happens I find one the very next day. Sorry, this is bugging me. I've got to set this to the corner. See, when I'm not showing settings, it's fine in the top left. That's kind of nice for an early gem, like a leveling gem. Movement speed and regeneration.
Yes, what is it?
So I don't want to be too boring in my demo, so I'm going to switch to my stronger character and do some maps to show you guys firsthand. If you stuck around this long, you must be interested in Path of Exile 1080p performance with the RX 5700. And this I've only been playing for about a week, so I've played this game before on past seasons years ago. But this is I've only got a couple Delirium characters. This is my main that I started like literally less than a week ago. So I'm not super high end content yet. I'm only about tier 14 maps at best. And my DPS is only, what is it? It's only around 73,000. It's not very high. 73,000 on in-game calculator. But we'll see here. Okay, I'll go to maps. The highest one I have is Jungle Valley. Let's hope I can roll one. I don't have a physical. I can't get past physical reflect, but I'll try to roll a rare. Good. Okay, so we'll put Syndicate in here. Load this map up. What else can I do? Wait, Jungle Valley. Sorry. I want to make it hard so that there's more density. It's one of these, so I want to put more gems here to make it higher level. So now it's still only tier 8 with 2 gens. Can I get more? Tier 10. That'll do. So you can see here, I'll put the syndicates in. Nothing too special. This is just for the FPS test purpose for FPS drops in high density. And oh, as when you join a new map, you have to reset your FPS counter. You can't like just leave it running. So you can see I'm getting drops into the 60s and 1% with this much density, but I'm not getting stutter. Look how smooth this gameplay is. See how I'm just whirlwinding through and it's not like stuttering? Oh, what the heck was that? I like instantly died. Oh, I didn't have my auras on. Duh. There we go. I didn't have my auras on. So yeah, you can see I'll reset the counter again because I died. But you can see that my GPU usage, it's not high because it's not that demanding for this kind of GPU. It's more of a CPU thing, and my 4 threads, which are the main loaded threads, are actually pushing my CPU usage to 50%. So half my CPU threads are being used by the game, and my CPU usage is also half, like 50% loaded. So I'm mostly CPU bottlenecked here, and RAM bottlenecked to a smaller extent for pushing higher frame rates and holding a consistent frame rate. So you can see my average dropped heaps, but I'm not getting FPS drops down into the 20s. It's just from, literally this is from density. That's like really dense gameplay. There's a lot of density there. And I think also this, like, wait for this world to go away, this effect. Yeah, see, once it stopped, the FPS started to climb back up to 100, but this is a populated map. So you gotta remember there's stuff off screen, I'm pretty sure, that is loaded. And there's also a lot of items on the screen. So the game has to keep all that, you know, it's gotta have it all rendered and loaded. That drops your FPS. It's more objects for the game to worry about. But as you can see, my minimum 4850, even with that kind of minimum that's under 60, I was still able to maintain some, what felt to me was smooth gameplay, apart from when I ran out of mana.
So be it. I will fulfill my duty.
Did I get, yeah. But this is just like a really high density demo. I'm not playing it. There's some classes that literally will lag your game, like certain summoner classes. It is a game in optimization issue if you have so much happening on the screen, because it happens in other games like Diablo. If you have tons of densities, just the the graphics card and the CPU just can't seem to handle that many elements on the screen at once. But for the most part, it's just to show the stability of the graphics card. Even when I had my average dropping a ton, performance was still decent. So see here? Just watch, my average is what the frame rate is most of the time when I'm going through this type of thick, really thick content. So if I was getting really bad FPS drop constantly, that average would be much lower. And the 1%, the minimum's 48, so not horrible. The 1%'s even higher than the minimum, somehow. I'll reset that again. This is Midnight Blade. Swirling Fear, do I need that? I could do it for another thing, but I'm playing on 1080p is a bit annoying for me because it actually like fits it into a tiny window in the middle of my 34-inch monitor for scaling. Otherwise, it stretches it out and doesn't look that great either. Oh, I still had it on there.
In this bar,
Whatever.
watch as the production of misery and pain continues. Unabated.
Yeah, you can see once the density goes down a bit.
Nice. Feels as though the walls are closing in, doesn't it, Exile?
Better with a weapon
Face down.
than with words.
That was 3.
Why do you inflict such violence?
I can't remember which which ones of these does what, so I'm not gonna like sit here googling in front of you guys.
You won't regret this.
But as you could see, that was pretty thick back there. It was around not 60 to 90 FPS for the averages. Oh, here we go. We'll get some density now. I'll just reset that counter. So you can see how the average is way down when I reset the counter during dense combat. But look how stable it is. It's pretty stable. This is this is mainly down to the CPU being strong enough to handle the load of the game, but also to do with the memory bandwidth being high enough to push the data that's coming through. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. That should be enough of a demo. Like you saw, that was pretty decent. Just to show that the RX 5700 is not the issue. Unless you have a faulty with your card. If you've got a faulty card, then you'll have that issue across multiple titles, not just the one. If it's just a one game giving you an issue, then it's more likely something to do with the game engine, the memory bandwidth, and the CPU optimization. So either your CPU could be like clocking really low, like because it's only using 4 threads, having 12 threads isn't going to matter. And having low usage, that doesn't mean that you're not bottlenecking, because those 4 threads on a lower clock speed CPU are going to be bottlenecking your performance. And as well, your memory is even more important. So if you're running single channel RAM, get another stick and fix your performance. See if I can even kill this boss. And yeah, that's it for the video. I'm just going to kill this boss and end the recording. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you learned something and enjoyed the video demonstrating the power of the the RX 5700. But too many of those. I don't want to drop that. I'm literally full up. So see that spike, latency? The spike that was from changing zones, not from the GPU or the CPU underperforming or doing anything weird. It's just how it is. Oh, no, I don't want to sell that yet. I need to...
Exile? Sell her in. Glad you made it back.
The heck? kind of ring is that? It's a square. I don't even know what these are, eh? Just so many items because I've been out of the loop for so long. I'll just vendor it. Kidding. I'm not that stupid. Increased rarity, increased quantity, increased only 4%. 10. Haha, it's like the lowest, as low as you could go. Sad. That might have been worth a bit if I didn't identify it. Darn.
Glad you made it.
Right, this is not going to be my main anymore after I level up my other character. Who really needs, my other character really needs chromatics for his crafting. Alright, thanks for watching guys, and see you in the next video. If there's any content you want, or if you have Q&A, if you want questions and answers, then just shoot in the comments and I'll reply when I get them. Sometimes there's a delay on YouTube, like I won't get a notification for some weird reason. There's like bugs with YouTube, but if I usually check it every day, so I'll just reply when I can. Okay, thanks for watching guys. See ya.